Today, I'm so happy to return Kathi Lipp to you. She is my um, third time guest on Living a Legacy Life, which must mean something. Kathi, welcome again.
I get to live my legacy here. That's amazing, Sue. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we'll hardly have to ask the legacy questions at the end, because your legacy comes through by the books that you write. And I'm
Mm.
very excited about this latest book. I've been waiting for it to come out, and it comes out what date?
October 8th.
Okay, and I think that's around the time this will be published, so I haven't figured that out yet.
Terrific.
Kathi Lipp is a best-selling author of The Accidental Homesteader. You can listen to that talk on my podcast. I'll link all those podcasts I've done before. Also, Clutter Free, The Husband Project, as well as host of the popular Clutter Free Academy podcast, which now you're co-hosting with Tanya Kubo, whom we adore.
Yes. We
Yeah,
adore.
yes. And
Jay
when I
adore.
interviewed her, that's when I found out about the clutter issues from her childhood as well. And
Yeah.
that's a very tender topic for people,
Yeah. Yeah.
either because of the abuse or their own problems with it. Don't look in my closet here, Kathi. But the something that she's brought up before is that the most important thing about that is the kindness aspect, because we need to be
Yes.
kind to ourselves, don't we?
To ourselves and to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. People who struggle with clutter uh, have some voice in the back of their head letting them know that they're never going to be enough. And
Mhm.
we have to let each other know we are already enough, and we don't have to live in fear of not having enough, not being enough.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Right. And not getting over certain humps in our lives that we may not
Hmm.
change until glory.
Yeah. Right.
Can you begin by, for those who haven't heard you before, introducing yourself, your family, a little bit about where you live and how you got there? Just a little short snippet.
Yeah. So my family in the house right now is my husband Roger, who I am absolutely head over heels in love with, and our dog Moose, and our 9-pound dog Moose. And we live in the mountains, kind of in between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe. We were in the Bay Area and wanted a second home for doing writers retreats,
Hmm.
and at some point made the transition to just being up here full time.
Amazing.
And we missed the Bay Area, but not enough to move back. And we're so grateful. We have 4 adult children who live in the Bay Area, so that's the reason we keep going back to visit. And we just we love to get to do what we get to do. I'm
Mm.
a writer and speaker and podcaster, and Roger supports me in all of that while still
Mhm.
working full time at his corporate job. And he's very involved in AI, which we have also been incorporating in some of our spaces here.
Mm.
So we get to do lots of really wonderful, interesting things.
Yeah. And I love the way that you two work together. He was on the last podcast I did with you,
Yeah.
and it was just so fun to get his perspective. He's a gentle man
Yes.
and brilliant and so
Yes.
supportive and so sweet. And if you haven't gotten hold of The Accidental Homesteader, I highly recommend. I just think it's such an inspiration when you have an idea and then you actually act on it. And I know it was a little bit accidental how you
It
acted on,
totally was.
because you were just going to do it for part time and now it's full
Right.
time. And it hasn't been easy. There've been so many challenges, and you talk about them in the book. And I think that's one reason we can trust your books, Kathi, because they come out of real life. It's not some fake thing.
Yeah, if you had told us up front everything we confront by moving to the mountains, I don't know that we would have done it,
Yeah.
but God is gentle
Yeah.
or surprising, both.
Surprising.
And
Right.
so between 14 feet of snow, the Caldor fire that burned
Mhm.
on all 4 sides of us,
Mm.
bears, chicken massacres, we've we've lived a lot of life up here in our 6 years,
Yeah.
and we're really grateful for it.
I think you're the real pioneer woman, but I won't go into that. Um, Tell us the story about how this new book came about. Tell us the title first, because there's a long tagline.
Yeah, so it is called a Sabbath soup, and it's really okay. You know what? And this is really embarrassing.
No.
that I don't know the name of the title. I mess it up, but now I've got it. Weekly menus and rhythms to make space for a day of rest. You know,
Mm,
you do the title and then you play
yeah.
around with all the subtitle.
Hmm.
I always love that scene from Julie and Julia where they're coming up with the
Hmm.
title of Julia's The Art of French Cooking, or I think it's for the servantless American cook, you know. And yes, so
Yeah.
it really is about weekly menus. You know, I grew up not really observing Sabbath. It wasn't a
Hmm.
part of our tradition. And then
But
when I got
You grew up in a Christian home.
um I would say yes. I would say that I was brought to church, that my parents were Christian, but I don't know that they would have described themselves that way. You
Oh.
know,
Hmm.
um it was a very, you know, it was the Bay Area. We didn't talk a lot about those
More
things.
private, more private.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, more private. Kind of maybe a New England,
Oh,
you know, approach to
yeah.
worship. And when I got married, went to a much different church than I grew up in, and basically knew all the things that I couldn't do on Sabbath.
That's what I was
So,
thinking because when I went to a I went to a more conservative college than I was raised in. And
yeah,
that's what Sabbath was, what you couldn't do on a Sunday. So
right.
I would go home for the weekend and then I thought, well, I'm home, so I'm under those auspices, so I'll do what I want. I was a little bit of a rebel,
Yes, right.
but
And
I'm still
so
going to
I think
heaven.
exactly, exactly. And you know, my favorite verse surrounding all of this is Mark 2:27. The Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath.
Mm,
And you know, the constraints around Sabbath, you know, are, you know, in light of the New Testament, are we are to honor God, we're to connect with people, and we're to remember um the provisions of God. And there are
mm,
other things, of course, around that. But when I went to this church, I started to learn, especially from my new husband, all the things we weren't supposed to do. But
mhm,
I thought that there was such a interesting kind of, how do I want to say? I feel like a trick was pulled on many of us women
mm.
because in order for everybody to rest, I had to
We
do
had to
all
work.
the work.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this seems like a bum proposition. And so, and Sue, I don't know if you remember, there was a book, it must have been in the 90s because that's when I was raising kids, called Once a Month Cooking.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was, you remember that? And
Hmm.
it was, you would take a Saturday each month and you would cook 30 different meals and stick them in your freezer.
I did it.
You did.
Hmm.
Okay. So
Hmm.
we both were part of that club.
Hmm.
Now, I will say my family loved the French bread pizza
Oh,
and pretty much nothing else.
oh.
They weren't really fans of the rest of the recipes. I was a fan of it about 2 days after I cooked because holy cow, that was a long day
It
of
was a
cooking,
lot of
right?
work. Hmm.
It was a lot of work. And so I went from that. I'm like, well, this doesn't really work for me. And then the evolution was getting together with a bunch of my friends, five other friends, and we would do something we called it Six Chicks Freeze and Fix because I love a good title. And each of us would make we would make three different main dishes,
Yeah.
but we'd make six family size portions of
Yep.
them,
Hmm.
freeze them, and then we'd get together. And by the time we got home, we had 18 different meals.
Wow.
And you know, people would bring out their best recipe. It's
So
really
you weren't
wonderful.
cooking together, you just brought them together and had a glass of
Exactly.
wine.
We tried to cook together a couple of times.
Yeah.
Whose kitchen is big enough for
Yeah.
that? It's
Not that,
really
yeah.
tough, right?
Mhm.
And so that was a great evolution. But I've realized in the year of our Lord 2024, that's kind of hard to do since we are really recognizing food intolerances,
Right.
allergies, things
Hmm.
like that. And let's just say taste. You know, if you bring me something with a green pepper, it's not happening. I am 57 years old. Please stop
Yeah.
trying to convince me I like green peppers. I do not.
Yeah.
So this this has become the outcome of it, is recipes that my family loves, but cooking one day a week and being able to say, okay, I'm taking a Sabbath off from Saturday night, from when I stick that chicken or that roast or that whatever into the oven to Monday morning. I'm not really worrying about cooking for anybody.
Hmm.
And it has changed how we weekend. It's changed how we Sabbath. And it's made me not resent the people I live with, since it's only Roger. Um, he's really grateful for that.
Yeah.
And it's made me be able to be a little bit more generous with feeding neighbors, feeding my mom, who is capable of cooking, but says cooking for one is just a bummer.
Yeah, it's
And
boring.
so,
Hmm.
this helps in a lot of different ways.
Well, something I recall, I thought you had told us a story in the past about a neighbor who helped you during some sort of crises, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
took him soup, and I thought
Mhm.
that's where the book came from. Can you tell us that
Well,
story?
you know what? Yes. So I gave you the 40-year version, and now I'm giving you the
Okay.
3-year version. So
Okay.
that's
Thank you.
Paul. When I just mentioned that I bring food to our neighbor,
Yeah.
that's who we're talking about. So the Caldor fire happened, and our house was spared, unlike many of our neighbors. And I knew that our neighbor Paul was one of the firefighters on duty. In fact, he got COVID during
Hmm.
that whole thing, and was in the ER. I mean, he was very sick. And so when he got out of the ER, I said, well, the least I can do is bring him soup. And so I said, can I bring over some food? And he said, yeah, that would be great. And so I brought it over, and Roger thought it was weird. He's like, I don't know. That seems weird. I don't know if I want food from a neighbor. And when we dropped it off, Paul said, I can't cook. I can't put anything together. So when I'm by myself up here at the cabin, which he is most of the time, he said, I just bring some cereal and a bunch of Lunchables, and that's
Oh
what
my
gets me through the
goodness.
week.
Oh my
Right.
goodness.
And so he's in his 70s. He's out there carrying those hoses and doing mop up after fire. So I just started saying, hey, Paul, we have extra. Can I drop it by? And unless we're out of town or he's out of town, every week we've got, just a cooler full, it's usually between 2 to 5 meals for him,
Wow.
so that we can help him. And then I bring some food to my mom. And that is a lot of how this got started, because I will be honest, with it just being me and Roger, I took a very casual approach.
Mhm.
But what I realized is I kind of was in a panic almost every night, like, what are we doing for dinner? What are we doing for dinner? And so I did some of this stuff leading up to this, but I got formalized in a
Yeah.
very informal way
Yeah.
a few years ago, and it's made all the difference in the
And
world.
and it was because you were knowing that you wanted to intentionally help your neighbor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to say, how do we actually love our neighbor, not just love thy neighbor?
You know, food is food make people feel seen because of food. I really do
Mhm.
believe that. And
Mhm.
I asked him about some of his preferences and things. He's not a big fish person. So when we do fish, we don't
You don't
include him
share.
on that.
Yeah.
No, but that's okay, because I don't want him to feel like he has to. But it also makes me feel very, very appreciated, because he thinks I'm the best cook in the
Yeah.
entire world. And I'm a very able cook,
Hmm.
but I'm not fancy. I'm not
Yeah.
doing,
Hmm.
gourmet stuff. I'm
Yeah.
doing wholesome, good food that can be shared.
We have a neighbor who became a widower during COVID. And of course, we
Mm,
immediately brought him food. But then I thought,
yeah,
the months pass, he's by
yeah,
himself.
right.
I kind of learned from his adult daughter that he didn't cook much.
Hmm.
And now she's moved in with him, and I still will put something on top of his mailbox. And the other day I did that, and then I forgot to text him to go check it. But I got a thank you text from her. Thank you for thinking
Oh,
of us, Sue. And I go, oh my gosh, I didn't even tell you it was from me. But it's good to have that
oh,
reputation that you're the one who is sharing leftovers, because
it's
there's just
so
two of us. We're
true.
not going to eat the same leftovers over and
Right.
over.
And
Mhm.
what you are doing, I always think about this. We just brought some food to a friend who their husband's in the hospital, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of going back and forth,
Right.
and there are kids. And the last thing that somebody needs in a situation like that is another decision.
Right.
So I just said, hey, I've made an extra meal. Can I drop it off at 3 o'clock? And if you're not home, I'll put some blue ice in there so you don't have to worry about it. And, when we talk about, the whole everything you're doing here, Sue, about being welcoming and bringing people in closer and connecting, I think about that. How can I, not in a competitive way, but a compassionate way, be the first person at somebody's door?
Mhm.
So I like to keep a few things on hand, like, the ingredients for my chicken and wild rice soup, um, a brownie mix. The Ghirardelli brownie mix
You cannot beat
is,
it.
you cannot beat
Yeah,
it, right?
homemade does not beat it. I'm sorry.
Yes. And so, you know what I like to do? I
Mm.
like to swirl in a little Nutella just to
Oh.
give it a little extra pizzazz.
Mhm.
And I keep here those hot and cold bags that you can get at the grocery store for
Yeah.
like three or
Mhm.
$4.
Mhm.
You can just put a Ziploc with ice in that,
Yeah.
go to the dollar store, get a disposable container, and then on the way to that friend's house with your
Ice bag.
foil pan,
Yeah.
yeah, your ice bag, your foil pan of
Mhm.
brownies, and your throwaway container of soup, you grab a bag salad and a loaf of bread,
There
and
you
you can
go.
be there in 3 hours.
Now, what did you just say that word was? Not competitively, but compassionately. What did you mean by
Right.
that? You don't
When
want to
I
be the
show up first at somebody's house, I'm not
Mhm.
trying to say beat everybody else,
Mm.
but most people, their ministry is something else. Their
Right.
ministry is to watch the kids, or, if, something else. And my ministry is often food.
Mhm.
So I can be the first person to show up because I have what I need.
Right.
And if food is part of your ministry, or you'd like it to be part of your ministry, if you have those things, those non-perishable things that you can just have at your house, it doesn't take that much extra. Oh, and I also like to put in there paper plates, napkins,
Oh, that's so smart.
plastic forks, spoons, knives, a little bit of butter, just so. And I always say, you you don't need to return any of this to
Mm.
me. If you'd like me to come pick up the dirty dishes, I'd be happy to, but all of this can be tossed. We can
Mhm.
worry about saving the
Right.
environment Monday through Friday. Let's just, because the last thing somebody needs to manage is returning dishes.
Right. I I uh I like things to look pretty and it's not always necessary.
Mhm.
Like those foil pans are not my
Mm,
favorite, but I did pray about
right.
going. I was praying before I went to this thrift store and I picked up some really nice looking metal things that it doesn't matter
Mhm.
if they're not returned. And I
Love
was
that.
able to give quite a bit of food to a friend last Sunday, and
Mhm.
it doesn't matter if they're returned. I can come and
Right.
get them. But one of them is suction topped, so you can actually put a stew or a chili in it, so it won't spill in the
Nice.
car. That's
Yes.
rather than a Tupperware or whatever. One thing I wanted to add to what you said about the last thing someone needs to do is make another decision, like feeding your
Mhm.
kids when you're in crises. I have a hospitality Facebook group, and this one gal
Right.
said that her mother was dying, close to going to heaven.
Mm.
And so she was spending so much time going back and forth that she and her husband were just eating like Lunchables themselves,
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
wanted to be there. And so a friend reached out to her and said, "What can I do to help?" She goes, "Well, actually, I have a tri-tip defrosted in my fridge. If you could just go in my house and cook it." And so this friend went to the house, picked it up, added vegetables or potatoes or something. And when she got home, here was a prepared meal. And I just thought that was
Mm,
genius and makes me kind of
so
cry.
smart.
And since then, her mom has passed, but that was just last
Yeah.
week that I heard that. And I thought, wow, what a practical thing. Because you know what, Kathy, it's almost an empty promise when we say, what can we do to help? That's another decision they have to make.
Yeah, and here's the thing, I love the heart behind it. Like, "Sue, I would do anything to help you at this point, but I don't know what you need."
Mhm.
you do know some of the things that they need,
Mhm.
and if it's somebody out of town, like I just mentioned to you, we were talking about there's a surge of COVID going on right now.
Mhm.
And my son's girlfriend got COVID. Now, last time we gave it to her, so this is a better COVID. We did not give it to her this time. But I sent her a $30 DoorDash. We don't live
Yeah,
in the same
right.
town.
Mhm.
And I just said, I want you to be able to order some soup because I can't bring you soup
Yeah,
right
that's
now.
exactly
So
it.
that's something we can do. If it was somebody who is going back and forth to the hospital, I love that tri-tip idea. What a genius idea.
Mhm.
The other thing is you could just drop something off at the hospital like sandwiches
Yeah, that's
or,
true.
and it's different to say, what do you need than what are you allergic to or what don't you like? Because we know those ideas. But when I say to you, Sue, what do you need? You might be like, I don't want to bother Kathy. I don't.
Right,
But if I just say, I'm coming, I just need to know do I need to do gluten-free bread or
right,
regular bread? Okay.
right.
Is there anybody who's suddenly become a vegetarian? Because that happens in families.
Yes.
But if I just declare this
Yes,
is what's happening, it makes all the difference in the
right.
world.
Yeah, people don't want to put you out or obligate you, unless they're your children, then they don't mind. But,
Right.
I did send a DoorDash to my daughter this week 'cause she moved all by herself from Manhattan to
Mm,
Brooklyn, and, she was too
that's a
tired to go
lot.
out, and she was broke, and so it was just a tiny
Yeah.
thing, and I said, "You know, honey, if I were there, I'd be cooking for you." She goes, "I know, mom, thanks. I'm gonna order
Yeah.
some Thai takeout right now." Now,
Oh,
just let's go back to the Sabbath thing because it's so good.
yeah.
Can you describe the format? Is it a recipe book or an inspirational book or a devotional book?
Um, I think it would be too much to consider it a devotional book, but there are some absolutely gorgeous prayers in there. I have a friend who is a poet. Her name's Bethany Howard, and
Hmm.
my editor, Hope Lyda. And I'm like, I do not have one drop of poet in me. I really love liturgical prayers that are heartfelt. Every there's a book called Every Moment Sacred,
Yeah.
Every Moment Holy. I'm trying to remember. Oh gosh, that's embarrassing. But I that's the style of prayer I like. Very
Mhm.
practical. This is the need. And so I said, that's what I'm looking for. And there's some beautiful prayers in that. But I really wanted to give a guide that, we there's life is very complicated these days.
Yes, it
And
is.
I just wanted to give some step by step. So I in my household, we cook on Fridays or Saturdays, depending on, are we going to a festival on Saturday? Then I'll cook on Friday. Are we working on Friday? Then I'll cook on Saturday. Um, so Thursday is when I prep for cooking. So I'll chop all the vegetables. I will, if I need to cook some meat, I'll do it on that day. Wednesday is when I'm going into town and I'm shopping.
Wow.
So I'm working backwards here.
Okay.
Tuesday is the shopping list and looking at what we already have on
Right.
hand and cleaning out the fridge. Like
Right.
anything that's past its prime, anything, or maybe we have lots of celery that needs to be used up, and we might say, oh, we're going to do a different recipe. Monday is meal planning. So I'm working backwards. Monday, I am planning for cooking on Friday or Saturday.
Okay.
But that way, there's a little bit each day, but no day is overwhelming. Now, I
Okay.
will say your cooking day is a couple of hours. You're putting, but really, it's about 3 meals that kind of carry you through the week because the the big dinner is on Saturday for our household. So that's like a roast chicken, maybe a roast, something like that. We tend to do soup on Sundays after church. And then Sunday night is something kind of comfort food, maybe like enchilada casserole or something like that. And so we're doing those 3 meals plus the sides. And if we're really ambitious, we'll do a breakfast. And I will say on Saturdays, we always do a dessert of some kind. Saturday's like our big meal. But then Monday, we're taking those leftovers from Saturday and turning them into something new. So we've got a roast chicken. We're going to do, chicken tortillas or
Right.
something like that. Or and then Tuesday we're having leftover soup along with another side. Wednesday, if there are any leftovers on Wednesday, that's when it's happening. Thursday and Friday, one night we're doing a pizza at home because I think life is better with pizza.
I do too.
And we're going to go out one day. It's a very realistic, it doesn't assume you're going to be home every single night. So maybe Tuesday's your night to go out, then you're going to adjust
Mhm.
accordingly. But it gives you a plan for that. Also, it's got about 120 recipes in it.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, there are a
Well, I
lot of
I looked
recipes.
over the table of contents, and isn't
Yeah.
each chapter a different soup?
Yes, there are 24 soups in there. And then we've got my favorite soups in there, plus we've got meal plans for the rest of the week that have some of those just classic wonderful recipes that are I try to do things that are going to be family pleasers. There's
Okay.
not a lot of it's not a very super adventurous book, but I guarantee you you'll find a couple of new family favorites. And to me, finding a new family favorite recipe is worth the price of admission.
I do too because my family's tired of my old family favorites. So to find a new one. Mom,
So
is it sopa fideo again? I go, I'm sorry, it feeds a lot of people.
I don't know what that is. What is that,
Oh,
Sue?
I'll send it to you. It's those little fideo noodles. You find it in the Hispanic section,
Uh-huh.
and you use a pound of hamburger, but you could use a pound of ground turkey, and it just makes a ton, and you can make it
Oh,
spicier. Yeah, I'll send it
please
to you.
send it to me.
I will.
Right now, I am working on my uh, Orizo de Pollo
Mm,
um, chicken and rice. We go to this Mexican restaurant that we love, but we live so far away that we can't go very often.
yeah.
And I'm like, I am going to learn to cook that recipe. So like there are some recipes in there that are repeats, but I think they're ones that, if you're doing the roast chicken on Saturday night, there are a couple of different things you could make that into on Monday night. And so we've
Now,
given some options there.
now I'm thinking of my audience who does not like to cook, so they're hearing a
Right.
lot right now about food.
Yes.
Um,
Oh,
what
I
tip?
want to talk to them.
Well, talk to
Yes.
them right now. Why is it
Okay.
important for them to get this book?
Okay. So it's not just about cooking. I There are recipes in there from people who love to cook to I sometimes I'm a cook, sometimes I'm a gatherer. So I love a good roasted chicken with lots of butter and lots of garlic. But when the week is crazy, you go to Costco. You get that chicken, or you go to Safeway or wherever it is you're living. You go there to get your chicken. The So much of this book is about the meal planning. So if you're like, you know what, I'm going to get that pan of enchiladas at Sam's Club,
Mhm.
the same principles apply. But here's the thing, Sue. I don't know about you. When I sit down to make a meal plan for the week, because I don't want to go to the store every day.
Mhm.
I don't want to be stressed out at 5:30 every night. And I sit down to make a meal plan. I cannot remember anything I've ever cooked in my entire
Me
life.
too.
So this is a plan for cooking.
Mhm.
So yes, there are things like I've got a great easy recipe for yeast rolls. And lots of people have told me I've never cooked anything with yeast before in my life. I'm like, well, these are the ones to try. I promise you. But I also think a good Hawaiian roll is a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. Also stuffed with cheese sticks and tomato sauce. I saw that on Instagram with Hawaiian
Ooh, I
rolls.
need
Oh
to
my
see
gosh.
that. Oh
I'll have
my
to
goodness.
find that again because I have a funny picture of my daughter eating it and then all the cheese coming down like string cheese. Like she's 2, but she's 32.
I
Um,
love it.
I was going to say I just got back from vacation. So right before I left, I threw a bunch of leftovers in the freezer. So what I did before grocery shopping on Saturday,
Mhm.
my big deal was to go through both freezers and find little bits of ham. So now I know I'm going to make a quiche this week. I had found one pie
Yes.
crust I'd made because I make 4 at a time. So I know I could do a chicken pot pie, but right now I just defrosted the two chicken because I didn't want to overbuy. I have a tendency to buy
Right.
things that are on sale because I'm a sale freak. And so I
Yes.
really had to resist. I don't need that. But I still picked up a Chinese fast food thing because my husband loves it. And I thought it's cheaper than going out. It was $6.
Yes.
And so he liked it.
You,
And so anyway, that was so I did things a little oppositely. I take things out of the freezer first and then do my meal planning. And then I do my list based on what I need.
so Sue, like this book has a few different approaches.
Okay.
So if you're running out of time, you can just follow the recipes and like, okay, boom, boom,
Oh,
boom, boom.
okay.
And or you can just buy the chicken. You can buy the stuff. S- But a lot of us are concerned about saving money.
Yeah.
Roger and I are in a saving money time in our life because we are paying for a lot of chemotherapy for our dog. That is not a cheap endeavor.
No.
And so what we do is if we're more concerned about saving money, then what I'll do is like I'll go through our pantry, I'll go through our freezer, and I'll build the meals around that. It
Yeah.
takes more time, it
Yeah.
takes more, knowing what you're doing in the kitchen.
Right.
But a lot of these recipes, you're like, oh, I have ham.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well then I can do Cuban sandwiches.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I, whatever that is, you can find the recipe that'll do with it. If you're like running out of energy, I'm just exhausted. Well, then, that maybe is the gathering. Like, here's a hunk of cheese. I'm going to buy a little ham here. And everybody can just go down the aisle and make their own ham sandwiches. There's a way to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And at different points in my journey, I've had to be concerned about different things. When I had teenagers, I felt like I had all three. I was out of time, I was out of money, I was out of energy. And so you just develop some of these tricks and ideas, but not, even though I love to cook, Sue, getting dinner on the table every day is
Yeah.
not always my favorite.
No, I just say, I sometimes I'll just have an outburst like, I'm tired of cooking, which
Yeah.
I don't normally complain. I don't think I should ask my husband, but and it's usually after having grown kids living here for a week or 3 days because I want things to
Yeah.
be special for them and they are a little bit more
Right.
gourmet than I ever was. And,
Yeah.
uh, and so when they're gone, it's like, whew, now I need to be taken out to dinner or to have those enchiladas from Costco.
Right, absolutely. And
Mhm.
I always keep like a PF Chang's frozen thing in my freezer.
Yeah,
So if we just need to not decide for a day,
right.
because this is all about pre-deciding. I'm
Oh yeah, I wanted to
pre-deciding
ask you
everything
about
that you
that.
do. Yeah, go for it.
Well, before we do that, I want to ask you about
Yeah,
this because I have several more
sure.
questions and we need to we need to close up. But why is keeping Sabbath something we need to keep from the Old Testament, even though we are under the New Covenant? And are we guilty of picking and choosing parts of Scripture that coincide with our personal preferences and throwing out other things in the name that that's not our culture anymore?
Yes, we are guilty of that. And the reason we keep Sabbath is because it's God's gift to us.
Mm. In
God
what
says,
way? In what way?
I know how I designed you. You are not designed for 24/7. You are not designed for the hustle. We look at Exodus about the manna from heaven and the guy, you
Mm,
know, working on the weekends to try to get ahead. And God said, this is exactly the opposite of what I've designed for you.
mm,
So when we say, are we guilty? Um, I, Guilty is a rough word. I would say we are unaware
mm,
of God's extravagant love for us, who
mm,
gave us 7 days, but says, you work six, and then one is for rest. And just in that sixth day, connect with me, connect with the people you love, and connect with your gratitude for all that I have given you.
mm. I
It's a
love that.
gift. It's a
It is,
gift.
it's a gift, and there's so many gifts we're just not aware of. Now, I was
Mhm.
raised in a very hospitable home,
Mhm.
where my mom invited every Tom, Dick, or Harry from church for
Yes.
um for lunch. Well, we called it dinner because it was Sunday, which I
Mhm.
thought was
Sure.
funny. When I met people who weren't raised in a Christian home, they would ask me, "Why do you call it dinner?" I said,
Yeah.
"I don't know." But she was a pre-decider because she put two chickens on time bake in a big blue roaster that morning, which made her late to teach Sunday school. So we always had two. The first bus would be my dad. The first bus is
Mhm,
leaving in 15 minutes. That's how he would wake us up. And then
mhm.
mom would make us late, so we would have to decide. But the point is, she was ready and willing to invite the stranger, which I love. It's
Yeah.
part of my legacy. And it gave her great joy. But was she not practicing Sabbath rest then?
I I think if you have already pre-decided and all you're doing is throwing a couple of chickens in the roaster, God bless you, right? Because what she was doing was saying, I'm going to later on today I get to rest. And I don't believe in this, if I work, I'm breaking God's command. Like if I do something, if I I just think that is not the spirit of God's law
Hmm.
to say, I want to feed people, I want to nourish them, I want to do this with abundance, but also uh, to be able to say, I pre-decided the chickens are dressed and ready to go. I'm throwing them in the roaster on Sunday morning. What a gift. I mean, we all have to lift a spoon in order to eat, right? Where do we draw the line? I think what we're saying is if there is a spirit of preparing for Sabbath, I think that's the heart of what God wants us to do. I but I just feel like there are so many things we can point fingers and say you're doing it wrong. I would just invite people to consider, do you get to rest on Sunday?
Hmm.
Do you get to have a break? Is there a break in the rhythm and the routine? And
I
is
wonder
that
if that
calling it rest?
a lot of pastors I think get Mondays off for that reason
Mhm.
because
Right.
it's a work day for them. Yeah, my next question has to do with what you probably just answered, but are there different definitions of rest?
Absolutely. I think so.
Like
I
what?
I think be playing together,
Hmm.
t- doing, I grew up, it's like, okay, you sit at home and you look at your thumbs. Like, no, and that wasn't our house, but that was houses of people I knew. They couldn't
Hmm.
have friends over. They couldn't, it was just, and I think, my goodness, um, I don't know if you saw this, Sue. It angered me greatly. There was a essay that went around and it was about how bad self-care is, that
Oh.
self-care is selfish.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I don't know who these women are that you're talking about, because the women I know are taking care of their aging parents and taking care of their adult children and working full time and feeding their neighbor and loving at the kids who are coming home after school. Like, those are the women I know, and the women I know deserve a break.
Yeah.
And so maybe her break is watching Pride and Prejudice on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And I understand we're all from different faith traditions, but I I just know we have a loving God who is not saying, "Oh, but you should be doing more," or "You should just be laying still so you can have a real rest." Like, sometimes I like to play cards or a game
Hmm.
with people we love, or we
Hmm.
like to go for a drive on a Sunday. You know, I think we are all grown enough to decide what is restful and restores us.
Yeah, I think that's so true. It's just like the difference between an extrovert and an introvert. And
Mhm.
because I'm married to such an extreme introvert, I don't have the same amount of company on a
Mhm.
Sunday that my mother
Right.
did. But my dad
Yeah.
was an introvert, but he always had people playing cards or ping pong while mom had all the women in the
Mhm.
kitchen. So he learned to deal with it. Um,
Yeah.
I think every tired woman and cook wants to know how we can, and here's a quote from your book, elevate a simple meal to a sacred ritual of connection and gratitude. Can you give us a tip or a tool to help make that happen this week?
Get other people into the kitchen.
Oh, that's a good
It
one.
doesn't need to just be one person serving it up on a platter so everybody else can enjoy it.
So
Um, I
agree.
love I love having, my husband outside barbecuing, you know, my friend's husband chopping the vegetables, my friend making the salad. I'm in, pulling the cake out of the oven, putting a toothpick in it. Like that's what connects us.
Mm-hmm.
When and just this place of lingering, the place of lingering and saying, we don't need to rush this meal.
Mm, love that. Is this more of an attitude change on our part more than a behavior change?
Figure out what that is that makes something special.
Mm. I'm afraid that the computer just froze and I asked you a
Okay.
question.
No, that's okay. So I can take it from um, your question. So I really think that there is an aspect of gathering around the table that starts before the table,
Mm,
and that is getting other people into the kitchen. Can
okay.
you have somebody chopping the vegetables? My husband's out on the grill. My friend's preparing a salad. I'm putting a toothpick into the cake to make sure that it's going to be ready for the strawberries and cream later on. And just an opportunity when people have participated in the meal, it's
Yes.
easier to linger, and to
Why is
just
that? Why
say,
is that?
I think because we all know that we have the ability to contribute, that we're making things better, that
Mm,
when everybody has a hand in it. This is why when my kids come home now, I used to be I used to be like, no, you guys all sit. I am going to make all the magic happen. And then
mm.
I realized I was a little resentful. Now I don't
Yeah.
feel that way with guests, but I do feel like when somebody says, I just want to hang in the kitchen with you, Kathy,
Mm,
or one of my friends goes outside to talk with Roger while he's on the grill, it makes such a difference. It's the
yeah.
preamble to sitting down and
Hmm.
lingering.
Right.
And so we can put some James Taylor on. We can gather around the table. We can linger because we also know when people help with the meal, we also know there's an indication that they are going to be taking their plates to the sink. And we can I can load the dishwasher while Roger gets the coffee going. And to just say we don't have to rush this.
Hmm.
There's not some check marks that we need to get through, that we can take our coffee, we can go sit under the stars, we can be together. It's a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing, and I think people envy homes that are that way, and they're just not sure how to make it happen. And I'm so grateful for this book because I think even if they take one step a month towards what you have written, it will change their lives and it will make their home a hospitable home, which is what we're all about. I remember this one new friend. Um, I invited her and her husband over for dinner for the first time. I didn't know them well, and I got a text 45 minutes before they were coming saying, can I bring an extra guest? And I thought, whoa, what if I were having pork chops and there's just one pork
Yeah.
chop per person? I wasn't. And she goes, and I'll
Right.
bring extra dessert because she was bringing dessert. She brought
Hmm.
so much extra. It was just so funny. But she knew that about me, that it would be okay because this person was from
Yeah.
another country and we'd had lots of people from other countries live with us. But to
Mm-hmm.
me, it was a compliment. And for
Yes.
us to get that way where we're not stressed, I think, when we show stress to our guests, it makes them feel uncomfortable. And we're there to show them the welcoming heart of God. Um,
Sue, have
Go
you
ahead.
heard of the cookie principle when it comes to church?
The what principle?
The cookie principle?
Uh-uh.
I learned this from Roger.
Mm.
If you have an event, the way to get people there is to say, could you bring a dozen cookies?
Oh, yeah.
And so I love that idea because you've already said you're already included.
Hmm.
We're
Hmm.
not putting on a show for you. This is a gathering together.
Right.
And that's what your friend knew about you.
Right. And also, we have a lot of, we're a college town, Cal Poly's here.
Mhm.
So I'll mix college kids with others, but I'll have the college kids bring something too, even if it's just a
Yes.
cube of butter. Now, if I
Mhm.
have had young people come for Thanksgiving and they bring the bean dish, they have to Google it because they don't know how to make green bean casserole.
Right.
And it was only an 8 by 8, for 50 people. So you have to kind of sometimes give them instructions. But you know what? It makes them feel good that I've invited them that
Yes.
day. That's what we did for Easter. I saw this young couple in front of us. I go, do you have a place for Easter brunch? And they said no. Well, they went home and made cookies because it was for service. They had time. And, We didn't need the cookies, but they
Right.
needed to bring them, and it was so sweet. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they felt
And
part of a family.
exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. You
Hmm.
made them feel more welcome than if you had said, "Let us serve you."
Hmm. Okay, one more question. If
Okay.
someone who is listening feels like giving up right now because embracing Sabbath sounds like one more thing to put
Yes.
on their lives because they're more
Yeah.
of a spontaneous non-planner, what tip could you give them right now to begin to experience Sabbath this week?
The reason the book is called Sabbath Soup, because we started with a pot of soup
Oh.
that we cooked earlier in the week and we put on the burner on Sunday after church.
Mm.
And if soup is too much for you, may I suggest that Costco has a great double pack of lobster bisque or tomato bisque or something
Hmm.
like that that you can just dump into a pot, but the decision is already made.
Mm.
And you can just come home after church. You can get that bag salad, you can get that loaf of French bread, and there is rest for a weary soul because of a bowl of soup. And I think
Excellent.
that is a
Mm.
great place to start.
Right. I'm sorry, that was I said it was the last question, but one more. How
That's
has
okay.
keeping Sabbath changed you and maybe changed you in your marriage?
Okay. Roger just rocked into the room, so I've never said this in front of him, but here we go. I think that when before we really practiced Sabbath, when he would say, I want to take a nap on Sunday, I was like, must be nice for you.
Mm.
Like, I don't know that I really thought that, but I thought we have so much to do.
Hmm.
Like, and I hate when people say must be nice for you. I feel like
Hmm.
that's the worst term
It's
somebody can say.
snide. It's
It's
snide.
so terrible.
Yeah.
And so here I am confessing on
Yeah.
Sue's podcast.
I'm sure I've
But,
said it many times.
but when we've made a decision as a family to say, no, rest is important, this is important. And by the way, I want my husband to take care of himself. I want to take care of myself. This isn't just about spiritual health, it's about physical health too.
Exactly. Hmm.
We need that break. And so I feel like Sabbath has done nothing but contribute to our household and our marriage.
Mm.
Really, truly.
Mm. So beautiful. Well, Kathy, how can people find you? I was going to ask you your favorite soup recipe, and does it have to do with gin? Because I have tried that before. Is that the tomato gin soup? Is it in your book?
Uh, yes, tomato gin soup is in there. I would say it's in running for one that we have in a freebie, which is my cream of chicken and wild rice soup.
Oh.
That's also a crowd pleaser. If you go to sabbathsoup.com, we've got some free gifts for you,
Oh,
including a 4-week meal plan that
okay.
you fill out the information and we will get that sent to you. And
Okay.
so
So they don't have to
but
pre-order the book to get that freebie.
there are a couple of freebies in there. There's one freebie that you do have to pre-order and another one that you can have.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Wonderful.
So but yeah, if you go to sabbathsoup.com, you can find all of that.
Okay. Well, that's so wonderful. And we will be giving away a copy of your book,
Yes,
correct? So all
yay. I'm
week
so
long, if you
glad.
comment on this on the show notes, either on social media or on my blog, or just email me, sue@welcomeheart.com, and say I'd like to be entered to win Sabbath Soup. We would be overjoyed to send the winner a copy.
Perfect. I love
Thank,
it.
thank you, Kathy, so much. I hope that you were blessed too.
Sue, thank you so much. It's so great to get to hang out with you.
Thank you.